What if you are not actually healing? What if you have just gotten really good at talking about your pain? I know that is an uncomfortable question, because you know the language now. You know about triggers, you know about boundaries, you know about attachment. You know how to explain what happened to you, why it hurt you, and how it changed you. You can tell the whole story now without crying. People hear you talk and think, wow, she is really healed. But then something happens, something small, a tone of voice, a delayed reply. Someone misunderstanding you, someone pulling away, a conversation that suddenly feels familiar. And before your mind can catch up, you are back in that old place. Your chest tightens, you go quiet. You start over-explaining. You feel the need to prove yourself even when nobody asked you to. And later, when you are alone, you think, I thought I was past this. Maybe you are. But maybe this is where we need to ask a better question. Not, why did I get triggered? But what happens after I get triggered now? Hey, welcome back to Ife Random Reflections. If this is your first time here, welcome. This is a space where we have honest conversations about life, faith, healing, relationships, and the things we sometimes struggle to say out loud. I am glad you are here, and today we are going to sit with a question that I think a lot of us quietly avoid. Are we actually healing, or have we simply become better at explaining our wounds? Because healing does not always mean the old wound never speaks again. Sometimes healing means you finally recognize its voice. You notice the fear before it turns into a decision. You notice the urge to chase someone who has withdrawn. You notice yourself preparing a 10-paragraph explanation for something that only needed one sentence. And this time, you pause. That pause matters because there is a difference between being triggered and being controlled by the trigger. And I think that is where some of us get confused. We have learned how to describe our pain so well that we sometimes mistake understanding it for changing it. We can explain exactly where our abandonment issues came from. We can tell you what our childhood taught us. We can explain why we struggle with rejection. We can quote the right scripture. We can talk about healing for an hour. And still go home and repeat the same pattern we were just talking about. Not because we are fake, not because our healing is a lie, but because knowing something intellectually and living differently are two different journeys, and they rarely happen at the same speed. There is a strange space between the person you understand yourself to be and the person you actually become when life puts pressure on you. You might know that you deserve better and still stay too long. You might know you do not have to explain yourself and still write the paragraph. You might know that someone's silence is not automatically rejection and still spend the entire night wondering what you did wrong. You might know that you have forgiven someone and still feel anger when their name comes up. And that does not necessarily mean you have made no progress. Sometimes it means your mind has arrived somewhere your emotions are still learning how to live. Think about it. You can know that you are safe and still flinch when something reminds you of a time when you were not. You can forgive someone and still need boundaries. You can understand your childhood and still have to teach yourself new ways of responding in adulthood. You can love God deeply and still have areas of your life where fear speaks louder than faith. That is not hypocrisy, that is being human, but there is another uncomfortable truth we have to make room for. Sometimes we really are using language to avoid the work. Sometimes talking about the wound feels safer than touching the wound, because talking about it gives us a sense of progress without requiring us to change anything. We can keep saying, this is why I am like this. But eventually, healing asks a different question. Now that you know why, what are you going to do differently? That question is much harder. Because understanding your pattern is not the same as interrupting it. Knowing that you people please does not automatically make saying no easier. Knowing that you fear abandonment does not automatically stop you from chasing people who are leaving. Knowing that you have an unhealthy relationship with validation does not automatically make you comfortable being misunderstood. At some point, healing has to leave the conversation and enter your life. It has to show up in the text you decide not to send, the boundary you finally keep, the apology you stop begging for, the relationship you stop forcing, the way you speak to yourself after making a mistake, the way you respond when someone does not choose you. The way you sit with discomfort without immediately running back to what is familiar. That is where things start to get real. And this is also where I think faith becomes important. Because there are things we can understand about ourselves that we cannot simply think our way out of. There are places in us that need time, grace, honesty, prayer, community, wisdom, and sometimes professional help. We do not have to pretend that saying the right words means the work is finished. God is not asking us to perform healing perfectly, but He does invite us to be honest about where we actually are. So maybe the question is not, am I healed? Maybe the better question is, am I responding differently than I used to? Not perfectly. Differently. Do I recover faster? Do I recognize the pattern sooner? Do I stop myself before I abandon my own needs? Do I apologize when I am wrong instead of becoming defensive? Do I leave when something is unhealthy instead of trying harder to be chosen? Do I give myself compassion instead of punishment? Do I trust God a little more in the places where I used to panic? Those changes may not make a dramatic story. They may not look impressive on Instagram. Nobody may clap for them, but they count. Because sometimes healing is not a dramatic moment where you suddenly become untouched by your past. Sometimes it is a Tuesday night when the old version of you would have spiraled for 3 days. But this time you notice what is happening, breathe, pray, and choose differently. Sometimes healing is so quiet that you almost miss it. And maybe that is why we need to be careful about measuring healing by how beautifully we can tell our story. Your ability to explain your wound is not proof that you have healed from it, but neither is being triggered proof that you have not. The real question is, what is your pain teaching you to do now? Are you still letting the wound make your decisions, or are you slowly learning to respond from the person you are becoming? Because maybe healing is not becoming someone who never hurts again. Maybe it is becoming someone who no longer has to let the hurt decide what happens next. And if you are somewhere in the middle of that process, I want you to know something. You are not failing because you are still learning. You are not fake because something still hurts. You are not back at the beginning because an old wound spoke again. Pay attention to what you do next. That might tell you more about your healing than the story you know how to tell. So tonight, ask yourself honestly, what do I know about my healing that I have not yet learned to live? Sit with that. No performance, no perfect answer, just honesty. And maybe that is where the next part of your healing begins. If this video spoke to something you have been quietly wrestling with, tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to know what part of this conversation stayed with you. If you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video with them. Not as a correction, but as a reminder that healing is allowed to take time. And if something in this video made you pause and reflect, give it a like. It helps this conversation reach someone else who may need it. If you are new here, subscribe to Ife Random Reflections and turn on your notifications so you do not miss the next conversation. There will be more honest conversations about faith, healing, relationships, life, and becoming who we are meant to be. Until then, be gentle with yourself. You may be further along than you think. I love you. See you in the next one.